Title: Betrayed by Love, Driven by Vengeance. Chapter 1: Blossoms of Fate. Spring's first breath painted the valley in hues of crimson and white. Plum blossoms scattered across the winding stone path that led to the Cloudvale sect, one of the oldest martial sects of the southern peaks. Here, beneath the drifting petals and whispering bamboo, the young prodigy Li Shen practiced his forms, each movement sharp, fluid, and filled with the quiet strength that made him the envy of many. He was only 19, tall and slender, with the calm gaze of a warrior who had seen too much too early. Raised by his grandfather, the former sect leader, Li Shen had inherited more than just status. He carried the burden of the sect's future and the whispered legacy of an ancient forbidden martial technique, the shadow petal scripture. Yet for all his strength, his heart was gentle. He spent hours tending to the injured in the sect's infirmary, offering medicine, comfort, and sometimes, unintentionally, a stolen glance of kindness that made many junior disciples swoon. But none held his attention like the woman who had arrived from the distant Amber Crane Pavilion a fortnight ago, Mei Lian. She was ethereal, like a painting come to life, hair as dark as midnight silk, eyes like spring dew on cherry blossoms, and a voice that carried the grace of falling snow. She was said to be a healer, sent to aid the Cloudvale sect's injured after a skirmish with the Ironbone bandits. Yet beneath her gentle demeanor lay an intellect as keen as a blade. Their first meeting had been accidental, or so he thought. Li Shen had been meditating beside the Mistfall pond when a soft rustle pulled his attention. Mei Lian appeared, cradling a tray of herbs. She paused, startled, and offered a bow. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to intrude." "You aren't," he replied, standing. "This place belongs to all who seek peace." Their conversations began simply, born of mutual respect. But within days, those conversations deepened into something else, into long walks under moonlight, shared tea beneath plum trees, and laughter that echoed against stone walls. For the first time in his life, Li Shen felt something stronger than duty. He felt seen. "I envy the blossoms," Mei Lian had said one evening, as they watched petals fall onto the pond. "They dance freely with the wind, not bound by rules or sects." "Even blossoms fall," he had replied, not unkindly. "But I suppose they fall beautifully." She looked at him then, truly looked. "And if one never learns to fall?" He didn't answer. That night, something shifted. Unbeknownst to Li Shen, each word she spoke, each glance she gave was carefully calculated. She had come not for peace, nor healing, but for the martial legacy buried deep within the Cloudvale sect. The shadow petal scripture, a technique her master had long coveted. A technique that Li Shen's bloodline protected for centuries. And she had found the perfect key to unlock it. The boy with kind eyes and a warrior's heart. Days turned into weeks. Mei Lian became a familiar figure in the Cloudvale sect's courtyard. The disciples adored her. The elders admired her refined manners. But none grew closer to her than Li Shen. "Your movements," she said one day as they practiced near the water mirror hall, "they remind me of falling petals, beautiful but fleeting." "They're part of a style passed down in my family," Li Shen admitted, then hesitated. "We call it the petal veil form." "A poetic name," she said, her eyes glittering. "May I see more of it someday?" He nodded, unaware of the trap being set. That evening, as they walked past the stone bridge arching over Crane River, Mei Lian paused. "What drives you, Li Shen?" He stared ahead. "Responsibility. My grandfather entrusted me with the future of our sect. I cannot let him down." "And your heart?" He turned to her. "It's learning to follow its own path." She smiled, and in that moment their fingers touched. But not all were blind to the shifts. Elder Yuan, a stern guardian of the sect's core teachings, watched Mei Lian closely. He had seen what unchecked desire could do in his youth, and the memory of betrayal still haunted his steps. When he approached Li Shen with gentle caution, his warnings were met with respectful dismissal. She is kind, wise, Li Shen said. If you knew her as I do. Trust is a blade, young one, Elder Yuan murmured. Held too close and it may cut deeper than an enemy's sword. Still, Li Shen chose to believe. In her eyes, he saw a future of peace, of love beyond duty. So, when Mei Lian asked to see the martial scrolls his grandfather once guarded, under the pretense of helping him develop counter-techniques for their skirmishes, he did not hesitate. She traced her fingers along the faded ink, eyes hungry. This is beautiful. Ancient. It's dangerous, he said. Few understand it. I would never misuse it, she whispered. And he believed her. He did not see the shadow that watched them from the corridor, nor did he sense the silent presence that awaited Mei Lian in the forest beyond the sect walls, Fang Rui, the man she had once sworn her life to. The wheel of fate had begun to turn. Chapter 2. Beneath the willow's shadow, moonlight danced across the surface of Crane River, painting the water in silver threads. Beneath the swaying branches of a weeping willow, Li Shen waited. The scroll in his sleeve was ancient, bound in faded silk and sealed with the sigil of his lineage. Every instinct in his body urged caution, but the softness in Mei Lian's eyes, the sincerity in her touch, had dulled the edges of his judgment. He told himself it was not betrayal, but trust. When she arrived, cloaked in twilight and quiet grace, her smile lit the shadows between them. You came. I said I would, he replied, handing her a tea flask. Tonight is warmer than most. They sat in silence for a time, their shoulders brushing, breath mingling beneath the drifting willow fronds. Then, slowly, reverently, he unfurled the scroll between them. Ancient script shimmered faintly in the moonlight, a secret ink that only revealed itself under specific lunar phases, a protection devised by his forefathers. Mei Lian leaned closer. Her eyes widened, not in wonder, but in triumph masked by awe. This is the petal veil's heart? She asked softly. Li Shen nodded. Part of it. My grandfather said this portion was designed to harmonize Qi with the falling rhythm of nature. It's less about power, more about flow. She traced a finger near, but not touching, the script. It's beautiful. Like calligraphy written by the wind. He chuckled quietly. That's what my grandfather used to say. You must care for him deeply. He raised me. Everything I know, honor, discipline, even compassion, I owe to him. Mei Lian tilted her head. And yet you share this with me. Li Shen hesitated, then looked into her eyes. Because I trust you. The words hit harder than he realized. Mei Lian's fingers curled, almost imperceptibly before she forced a smile. The moon climbed higher. Li Shen rolled up the scroll with reverent care and returned it to his sleeve. They walked along the riverbank, past glistening stones and whispering reeds. He spoke of childhood lessons, of sparring matches beneath the twin pines, of his grandfather's stories about the world beyond the Cloudvale Mountains. Mei Lian listened, nodding, laughing softly when he imitated old Master Chu's shrill voice, sighing when he described the loneliness of leadership. And all the while, she remembered Fang Rui's voice. Gain his trust, learn what you can. When the moon is full, I'll come for it. She was to be the snake in the garden, the poison in the wine. And yet, later, when she returned to her guest quarters in the eastern courtyard, she lit a single candle and uncorked a small porcelain vial. Inside were crushed orchids and blue lotus petals, the code she'd arranged with Fang Rui. She inked the petals with cinnabar and wrapped them inside a bundle of healing salve before sending it to the outer forest courier station. He would understand. The scroll had been seen. The heart of the petal veil was within reach. Meanwhile, Li Shen trained alone atop the moonshadow cliff, his breath clouding in the night air. He moved slowly, deliberately, practicing the very movements he had sworn to protect. Something gnawed at his chest, not doubt in her, but in himself. Why did he feel as if he had betrayed something sacred? From the shadows of the mountain path, Elder Yuan watched, his gaze dark with worry. He had not confronted the boy yet, had not dared to accuse him without proof, but he sensed danger curling in the petals of spring. Back in the forest, Fang Rui read the coated petals and smiled. It begins. Chapter 3. Crimson Dagger, Shattered Trust. The morning mist clung to the mountain like a shroud, heavy and silent. In the quiet hours before the bell tolled the start of martial drills, Mei Lian stood before the reflection pond, her image rippling with every breeze. She touched her chest, where her heart should have felt victory, but instead beat with unease. Fang Rui would arrive soon. The coated petals had been delivered. She had done her part. And yet, last night's walk with Li Shen echoed too loudly in her thoughts. The way he looked at her, not just with desire, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. She had lived a life among liars and spies, but never had hope been used as a weapon against her. Until now. She did not see Li Shen approaching behind her, dressed in the cloud-white robes of a senior disciple. His steps were as soft as mist, but she still turned, sensing him. "You're up early," he said, offering a smile. "The mist here is calming," she answered. "It helps me think." "About what?" he asked. She hesitated. "About whether all things bloom just to fall." Li Shen tilted his head. "Even if they fall, they leave behind seeds." Her throat tightened. Before she could reply, Elder Yuan appeared at the far side of the pond. His presence was as commanding as a sword's edge, his robes dark against the morning light. "Li Shen." A word. Li Shen bowed. Mei Lian offered a graceful nod before leaving them. Yuan's eyes followed her retreat. She is not who she claims to be. Li Shen's expression tightened. "You've said this before. Without proof, it's only suspicion." Yuan held out a small cloth, a healer's satchel taken from the courier path. Within it, crushed petals and red-stained silk. "This was intercepted on the outer trail. The ink is code. The flowers, symbols from the Amber Crane Pavilion's clandestine division. The words struck like iron." Li Shen felt the world shift. That night, Fang Rui arrived. He was a shadow among shadows, his face half-masked, his blade glinting in the torchlight as he crept through the bamboo forest toward the Cloud Vale's hidden archive. Mei Lian met him at the perimeter. "You're early," she whispered. "You're late," he replied. "Where is it?" She held out a scroll, the decoy. She couldn't betray Li Shen fully, not after what she had felt. But she also couldn't let Fang Rui leave empty-handed. Her heart was divided, torn between past loyalty and present guilt. "This isn't the complete scripture," Fang Rui snarled after a glance. "You're holding back." Before she could answer, a flash of steel parted the leaves. Li Shen stepped into view, sword drawn, expression carved in betrayal. "You lied to me." Fang Rui lunged. Swords clashed beneath the willow, petals flying like blood in the wind. Mei Lian cried out, torn between them. Li Shen fought with fury, born of heartbreak, but Fang Rui's strikes were cold, efficient, trained by pain and purpose. The battle was brief. Fang Rui slashed low, breaking Li Shen's guard. A final strike sent him crashing into the roots of the ancient willow. Blood blossomed on his robes. Mei Lian ran to him. "Li Shen!" His hand caught hers. "Why?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to end this way." Fang Rui pulled her back. "Enough, we're done here." But Mei Lian didn't move. Cloud Vale disciples arrived with torches. Fang Rui fled into the forest, vanishing into the night. Mei Lian was taken into custody. Li Shen's wounds were grave but survivable. Yet what broke was not his body, but his spirit. His sect shamed, his trust shattered, his legacy exposed. And in the silence of the infirmary, beneath flickering lantern light, Li Shen wept for the first time in years, not from pain, but from the truth that love had been a lie. Chapter 4. Ashes Reborn. The sky hung heavy with the scent of rain and regret. The Cloud Vale sect held a muted air, no celebration, no disciples training in the courtyard, only whispers drifting like phantoms. After the betrayal, the sect master declared Li Shen unfit to inherit the Petal Veil scripture. The scroll had been sealed. Mei Lian, though spared execution due to her confession, had been banished. And Li Shen, he left without a word. Through mountain paths and broken trails, he wandered into the wilderness, his body weak, spirit hollow. In the deepest woods of the southern Ashen Valley, he collapsed beside a forgotten riverbank. Days passed. Nightmares haunted him. Thunder cracked like whips across the sky, until the drunkard found him. A gourd sloshed with bitter wine, a laugh like rusted bells. The old man had no name, only the title the villagers gave him, Crazy Mo. He dragged Li Shen to a cave beneath the redwood canopy, fed him soup, spoke in riddles, and watched. When Li Shen finally stirred, eyes dull with failure, Crazy Mo tossed a broken sword at his feet. "The heavens break what they plan to rebuild," Mo said. "Show me you haven't died inside. Swing." Li Shen coughed. "I've lost everything." "Wrong," Mo replied. "You've lost illusions. Now fight like you've nothing left." Days turned to weeks. Mo's methods were madness, tasks like catching raindrops with a needle or balancing on bamboo poles during storms. But Li Shen endured, not because he believed, but because he had nothing else. One evening, Mo led him deep into a valley filled with plum blossoms and stone statues of warriors long dead. "Here lies the grave of the Scarlet Thorns, a sect forgotten after they rebelled against heaven. This is where I'll teach you what your fancy scrolls never dared." From within a sealed urn, Mo drew out ancient texts, burnt at the edges, inscribed with a script so primal it seemed to breathe. "This," Mo whispered, "is the ghost petal style. Not bound by righteousness, it flows with fury and silence." Li Shen read the words. They sang to his wounds. He began again. Seasons passed. His body hardened. His spirit reshaped. No longer did he mimic the elegant forms of Cloud Veil. Now he moved with grim purpose, his key a storm held by skin. The ghost petal was brutal, unpredictable, meant to kill. Mo watched him one night, eyes dim with memory. "Remember, boy, revenge will not fill the hole in your heart, but it may teach you who you are." Li Shen did not speak, but in the silence the wind shifted. His heart had not healed, but it had changed. He was no longer the heir of Cloud Veil. He was the storm it had created, and he would return not for justice but reckoning. Chapter 5. Crimson Whispers. The market town of Red Reed Hollow bustled with life, unaware of the shadow drifting through its streets. Merchants hawked incense and silks, hawkers sang of miracle tonics. But no one noticed the cloaked figure moving between them, eyes scanning, ears listening. Li Shen had returned. His hair, once neatly tied with a cloud pin, now fell in loose waves down his back. The scar across his brow marked the night he'd been left to die. But it was his aura, quiet, cold, coiled like a predator, that made people step aside. His first target was information. Rumors led him to the Eastern Pavilion, where officials, thugs, and merchants mingled over hot wine. In a corner booth, he sat across from a spy known only as Sparrow, a girl no older than 16, with sharp eyes and sharper prices. "Cloud Veil's elders think you dead," she said, sipping tea. "The scroll's sealed. Mei Lian vanished. Fang Rui's the new golden hawk in the sky." Li Shen's eyes did not flinch. "Where is he now?" "South, in Yunling. They say he's wooing a princess now. Fancy robes, better titles." Li Shen left 3 silver taels and a dagger. "Tell no one you saw me." She grinned. "Didn't see a thing." That night, he climbed the roof of the Eastern Pavilion, looking down upon the town. Moonlight kissed his blades. Below, a group of Fang Rui's hired swords swaggered through alleys, drunk on power. He dropped among them like a shadow split from the moon. 5 men, all dead in 3 breaths. He left one alive, barely. Enough to whisper, enough to bleed fear back to his enemies. Li Shen's name, once buried in disgrace, was now etched in crimson whispers across taverns and courtyards. Fang Rui heard them in his golden tent. Meanwhile, Mei Lian wandered alone in the Ghost Ridge forests, her robes torn, her heart hollow. She had betrayed Li Shen, yes, but the plan was Fang Rui's, the manipulation his. And when she was no longer useful, he'd cast her out like ash in wind. Every night she heard the river in her dreams, the one where Li Shen first showed her the scroll, the one beneath the willow. She wept by its banks, whispering his name into the water. In Red Reed Hollow, Elder Yuan arrived under the guise of a traveling monk. He found the bodies, recognized the sword work. Impossible, he muttered. He was lost, broken. But the petals on the corpses told another tale, ghostly cuts that bled black. Li Shen had returned, changed, and heaven help those who stood in his way. Back in the cave beneath the redwood canopy, Crazy Mo sat by a dying fire, staring into the flames. "Storm's brewing," he murmured, sipping from his gourd. "And this time, the petals fall with blood." He laughed, and far away, Li Shen marched toward Yunling. His revenge had begun. Chapter 6. Blades in Bloom. The gates of Yunling were tall, adorned with banners bearing the sigil of the Rising Serpent sect, Fang Rui's new allies. Gold and crimson fluttered in the breeze, but Li Shen saw only blood in their colors. He entered under a guise, a wandering swordsman offering protection to merchants. None questioned him. The world was full of such men. In the city square, a festival bloomed. Petals rained from the sky, red blossoms to mark the ascension of the princess's favored suitor. Fang Rui stood atop a raised platform, his robes embroidered with dragons, his smile sharp as steel. He waved to the crowds, oblivious to the eyes in the crowd that watched not in awe, but in calculation. Li Shen felt the wind shift. A troupe of dancers took the stage, swords and silks moving in tandem, but one among them was not like the others. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes duller, but he knew her. Mei Lian. Their gazes met. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Then the moment shattered. Li Shen moved that night, not toward her, but toward a forge deep beneath the city. The blacksmith there owed Crazy Mo a debt, and Li Shen arrived to collect. He left with twin blades, forged from star metal and etched with runes of vengeance. He began cutting through the ranks. Guards first, quietly, in alleyways. Then lieutenants, publicly, their deaths marked with crimson petals. The city began to whisper. The Crimson Ghost, they called him, he called. Fang Rui responded by tightening security and preparing for war. But it was Mei Lian who sent word first, a single plum blossom delivered by a courier. Li Shen opened the folded petal. Within 3 words, "I remember everything." That night, they met beneath the old moon bridge. No weapons, no lies. "I didn't come to beg," she said. "I didn't come to forgive," he replied. "Then why are we here?" "To see if there's anything left." There was silence between them, a silence heavy with memory. "I was a coward," she said, "but he used me, just as he tried to use you." Li Shen turned away. "The difference is, I let him." She reached for him, but he stepped back. "If you truly want to help me," he said, "don't stand in my way." "I won't." He vanished into the night. 3 days later, the city exploded in fire. Li Shen struck the eastern palace first. Dozens of Fang Rui's guards fell. Petals rained again, not from celebration, but from blood. And on the steps of the grand hall, beneath blooming trees, Li Shen stood alone. Fang Rui emerged with a blade in hand, golden armor gleaming. "You're no ghost," he sneered. "You're a remnant," Li Shen raised his blades. "And you're a rot that needs cutting." The petals bloomed around them. The duel began. Chapter 7. The Edge of Darkness. The battle raged in the moonlight, Fang Rui's golden armor flashing like a beacon in the night as he swung his blade, the edge cutting through the air with a deadly hum. But Li Shen was a shadow, his twin blades moving faster than the eye could follow, parrying, striking, dancing between his opponent's swings with a grace that came from years of discipline and anger. Each movement was a statement, a promise that he would never be broken again. Fang Rui's laughter echoed through the courtyard as he struck again. "You think you can defeat me? A broken sword can never be whole again." Li Shen's eyes narrowed. "I am no broken sword." He twisted, slashing upward to catch Fang Rui's guard off balance. The force of the blow made the golden warrior stagger back, a moment of vulnerability. Li Shen pressed the advantage, his blades singing as they cut through the air with deadly precision. The duel was fierce, the ground beneath them marked with the weight of their clash, but Fang Rui's strength was starting to waver. Li Shen could feel it, could feel the gap between them closing with every passing moment. Finally, with a swift, violent motion, Li Shen struck. One blade went high, the other low, and Fang Rui's sword flew from his hands. He fell to the ground, his chest heaving as he stared up at Li Shen, his face twisted in disbelief. Li Shen stood above him, his chest rising and falling with the effort of the fight. "You were never worthy of the petal veil." He raised his blade, ready to deliver the final blow. But then, a soft voice called out from the shadows, a voice he recognized. "Li Shen." Mei Lian stepped forward, her face pale in the moonlight. Her eyes met his, filled with regret and sorrow. "Don't kill him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please. He's not worth it. But you still have something to live for." Li Shen's heart clenched at the sight of her. She was still the girl he had once loved, but so much had changed. He lowered his blade, eyes never leaving her face. "Why are you here?" Mei Lian took a step closer, her hands trembling. I couldn't bear it anymore. I was a fool. I was used by him, by Fang Rui. But you were the one who always saw me, the one who truly cared." Li Shen's gaze softened for a moment, but then the weight of his anger returned. "You betrayed me." "I know," she said softly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "And I can never undo that. But I can still help you. I can help you destroy him, once and for all." Li Shen's mind raced. Every fiber of his being wanted to take his revenge on Fang Rui, but he knew that killing him would not bring back what he had lost. With a heavy heart, he lowered his blades and stepped back. This ends tonight, but not like this. Fang Rui, weak and bloodied, lay on the ground, his eyes wide with terror. He had underestimated Li Shen, and now he would pay the price, but it wouldn't be with a quick death. "Take him to the dungeon," Li Shen ordered. "Let him rot in his own filth, knowing he was defeated not by death, but by the very thing he sought to control." Mei Lian nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the choices she had made. But she was resolute. The battle had ended, but their war was far from over. Days later, Li Shen stood on the balcony of a fortress overlooking Yunling, the city now in flames behind him. The screams of Fang Rui's followers echoed in the distance, their reign of terror brought to an end. But there was no joy in the victory, no celebration in the destruction. His eyes drifted to the east, where the sun was just beginning to rise. The world was changing, and Li Shen would change with it. He had no place in the world of the past, not anymore. His future was uncertain, but it would be his own to forge. And no matter what path he took, it would be a path of vengeance and redemption. He could feel the weight of it, the darkness that still lingered in the corners of his soul. But with every step he took, it grew lighter. The war had been won, but the battle for his heart was still to come. Far away, in the quiet forests, Crazy Mo sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. "It's only the beginning," he muttered. "The storm isn't over yet." Chapter 8. The Phoenix Reborn. The forest had changed. No longer a place of solace and silence, it now felt like a place of conflict. Li Shen's footsteps echoed along the narrow path that led deeper into the shadows of the trees. It had been weeks since the defeat of Fang Rui, but the scars left on Li Shen's heart and soul were still raw. His eyes, once filled with hope and love, were now a cold mirror to the world around him. He had spent the past month training alone, pushing his body to its limits in the unforgiving wilderness. He had learned much, but the lessons had come at a great cost. His heart had hardened and his trust in others had withered like a dried leaf. And yet, despite it all, he knew one thing for certain. He could not stop. Not yet. The fire in his chest still burned, though it was no longer fueled by anger alone. It had become something more, something deeper, something that had once been lost, but now felt like it was slowly returning. He could feel the power of his lineage, the strength of his ancestors, stirring within him once more. The petal veil, the martial art that had been passed down through generations of his family, was more than a skill. It was a legacy, a force of nature that could reshape the world. Li Shen paused at the edge of a cliff, gazing out at the vast expanse of the world below. The wind tugged at his hair, and he closed his eyes, breathing deeply. The petal veil was more than just a technique. It was the key to unlocking his true potential. It was his inheritance, his birthright, and it was his destiny to master it. But there was still one piece missing. One secret his grandfather had hidden from him. The final piece of the petal veil, the true essence that would complete the technique, lay beyond the horizon. Li Shen's journey was far from over. The sounds of cracking branches echoed through the forest, bringing Li Shen's thoughts back to the present. His hand moved instinctively to the hilt of his sword, his senses sharpening in an instant. A figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man dressed in tattered robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. The man's presence felt strange. Not quite human, yet not entirely foreign. It was as though his very being was a contradiction. The man stepped forward slowly, and his eyes, pale and glowing with an unnatural light, locked onto Li Shen's. "I have been waiting for you," the man said, his voice low and resonant, like the sound of thunder rolling across the sky. Li Shen's hand tightened around his sword hilt. "Who are you?" The man's lips curled into a slight, knowing smile. "A messenger of fate, you might say." The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Li Shen's. "I have been sent to guide you, to help you find what you seek." Li Shen narrowed his eyes, suspicion rising within him. "Guide me? I don't need anyone's help." The man chuckled softly. "That is where you are wrong. You may not need help, but you will need guidance. You are no longer the same Li Shen who once wandered those peaceful forests, chasing after fleeting dreams. You are something more now, something greater." Li Shen's grip on his sword relaxed slightly, but his stance remained ready. "What do you want from me?" The man tilted his head. "I want nothing from you, Li Shen. But the world, the very fabric of destiny itself has been altered, and you are the one who must set it right." Li Shen felt a sudden weight on his shoulders, as though the very world itself was pushing him down, forcing him to bend beneath its burden. He took a step back, as though instinctively rejecting the man's words. But the man's gaze never wavered. "The petal veil is only the beginning. You must seek the final key. It lies in the realm beyond your reach, where even the gods fear to tread." Li Shen frowned, the doubt in his heart growing stronger. "And where is this place?" The man smiled cryptically. "Beyond the boundary of what you know, beyond the mortal realm. There, you will find what you seek. But know this, what you discover will not come without cost." The air around them seemed to grow heavy, and Li Shen could feel a presence, something vast, something ancient, watching him from the shadows. He knew in that moment that his journey had just begun. The man turned and began to walk away, his form flickering like a shadow in the wind. "Remember this, Li Shen. You must decide, before it is too late. Will you rise as the phoenix reborn, or will you remain a broken soul, lost to the flames?" Li Shen stood in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on him. The path ahead was uncertain, but the call of destiny had already been made. His fate was no longer in his hands, but it was not the end. It was only the beginning. Li Shen continued his journey, now more resolute than ever. He had no answers, but he had purpose. The world was changing, and he had to change with it. But deep in his heart, one question lingered. What price would he pay for power? And could he afford it? Chapter 9. The Descent into the Abyss. The journey had taken Li Shen to the edges of the known world, a place where even the bravest dared not tread. The path had become treacherous, the air thick with fog and heavy with a sense of dread. Every step he took felt like a step further away from the man he once was, as if the very land itself sought to test his resolve. The forest had long since given way to jagged cliffs and dark valleys, the trees now twisted and gnarled, their limbs reaching out like the hands of the dead. The wind howled through the cracks in the earth, carrying with it whispers of things unseen, things best left undisturbed. Li Shen's hand never strayed far from his sword. The encounter with the strange man in the forest had unsettled him. There had been something unnervingly powerful about the man's words, as though they held a truth Li Shen wasn't yet ready to face, a truth that pulled at the very fabric of his existence. The further he traveled, the more he could feel the presence of something ancient, something vast. The world around him seemed to pulse with a dark energy, as if the land itself were alive with a hunger that could never be satisfied. He had reached the abyss. It was a place spoken of only in whispers, a realm between worlds, where the lines between life and death were blurred, and where the boundaries of the human soul were stretched beyond comprehension. Li Shen stood at the precipice, looking down into the black chasm that seemed to stretch forever. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the very ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble with the weight of the unknown. This was the place where the final key lay, the realm beyond the mortal world, the domain of gods and demons alike, the key to the true power of the Petal Veil. But what lay ahead was not something that could be easily conquered. The abyss was not a place for the faint of heart. It was a trial, a test of will, and only those who were truly worthy could survive its trials. Li Shen had no illusions. He knew that whatever lay beyond would demand everything from him. But he had no choice. The path had already been set. The price for power was steep, and he had already paid much. Now, there was only one thing left to do. He stepped forward, the wind whipping around him as he descended into the darkness. The air grew colder with each step, the light from the outside world slowly fading as he moved deeper into the chasm. It was as if the very earth itself sought to swallow him whole, to drag him into the depths where no light could reach. But Li Shen's resolve was ironclad. He had come this far, and he would not turn back now. The ground beneath him shifted suddenly, and he was plunged into a vast cavern. The walls were smooth and black, shimmering with a dark energy that seemed to pulse with life. The air was thick with a heavy silence, broken only by the faintest echo of his footsteps, and then he saw it. At the center of the cavern, floating in midair, was a sphere of pure energy, a swirling mass of light and shadow, constantly shifting and changing. It radiated power, an overwhelming force that made Li Shen's heart race and his breath quicken. This was it, the final key. He reached out, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the sphere. The moment his skin made contact, a shockwave of energy surged through him, sending him crashing to his knees. Pain tore through his body, a searing agony that seemed to burn away his very soul, but he endured. The power surged within him, swirling through his veins like molten fire. His body trembled, but he did not falter. This was what he had come for. This was the price he had to pay. As the pain intensified, he saw visions, flashes of his past, of Mei Lian's betrayal, of his family's downfall. He saw the faces of those he had lost, their eyes full of judgment and sorrow. He saw the ghosts of his ancestors, their disappointed gazes following him as he stood on the precipice of his fate. And then, the vision changed. He was no longer in the cavern. He was standing in a vast, endless void, surrounded by countless figures cloaked in shadow. Their eyes were cold, their forms indistinct. They were watching him, waiting. A voice echoed through the void, deep and resonant. You seek power, Li Shen, but do you understand the cost? Li Shen's voice was steady, though his body shook with the force of the energy coursing through him. I understand. I will pay whatever price is required. The shadowed figures stirred, their eyes narrowing. Then you must know this, the voice continued. The power you seek is not a gift. It is a curse that will change you, a curse that will consume you. Li Shen's grip tightened around the energy sphere. I am ready. A cold laugh filled the void. Very well. But know this, Li Shen, once you accept this power, there is no turning back. You will become a part of the abyss. You will become one with the darkness. The ground beneath him trembled, and Li Shen felt the weight of the curse settle upon him like a shroud. The power surged once more, overwhelming him with its intensity. But Li Shen did not fear it. He embraced it. The void around him cracked, and the shadows closed in. Chapter 10. The Rise of Shadows. The world had changed. It was no longer the land he had once known, where the sun shone brightly and the rivers flowed with clarity. Everything had become an illusion, shrouded in the darkness that now surrounded him. Li Shen had passed through the abyss, and the power he had sought was now his to command. But with it came a price he could not yet fully understand. The dark energy he had absorbed twisted within him, a force both exhilarating and suffocating. It was as though his very soul had been remade, forged anew in the depths of the chasm. His senses were heightened, his body stronger, faster. He could feel the pulse of the world around him, the vibrations of life and death coiling together in a symphony of chaos. He had become something else, something more than human. And yet, as the power surged through him, Li Shen could not shake the nagging feeling that he had lost something precious. The purity of his soul, once steadfast and unwavering, was now tainted by the very force he had sought to control. It was in this moment of inner turmoil that he realized the truth of the voice in the abyss. The power he had gained was not a blessing, it was a curse. The road ahead would not be easy. He would have to confront the demons of his past, Mei Lian, Fang Rui, and the betrayers who had taken everything from him. But more than that, he would have to face the monster that now lurked within him, a shadow of his former self, hungering for more power. Li Shen stood on the precipice of a new dawn, his mind consumed with a single thought: revenge. The first step would be to return to the sect that had cast him aside, the place where his destiny had been twisted by lies. He would show them what they had turned him into. He would make them regret abandoning him. But as he began his journey back, he found that the world had changed in ways he had not anticipated. The sects, once divided and weak, were now united under a single banner, Fang Rui's banner. The man who had once been a shadow in the background had risen to power, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Mei Lian, too, had changed. Her beauty was now marred by a coldness, an emptiness that Li Shen could not ignore. She had become a weapon in Fang Rui's arsenal, her loyalty now sworn to him. Li Shen's blood boiled as he thought of her, of the betrayal she had so casually delivered. She had been the one person he had trusted, the one person who had held his heart. And yet, she had thrown it away for power. But as he steeled himself for the battles ahead, Li Shen realized that his quest for revenge was no longer just about those who had wronged him. It was about reclaiming himself, about overcoming the darkness that now sought to consume him. The shadows that had once been his enemy were now his allies. He would use them to bring the world to its knees. As he stood at the threshold of his former sect, Li Shen's resolve hardened. The man who had once been full of hope and innocence was gone. In his place stood a warrior, a being forged in the fires of betrayal and darkness. He was no longer the boy who had fallen in love, nor the man who had been deceived. He was something far more dangerous. He was a force of nature, and he would have his revenge.